We're telling them, yes, we're seeing the challenges. We're also, guided by laws. These are public resources. You might not be able to utilize this money in a private kind of institution. At the same time, it's private and public. It's kind of mixed. You're not sure where they are. So we're telling them, can we register these schools so that these children are able to benefit these resources? So these are discussions we have been having, and hopefully in our next year, we'll be able to have these discussions and, of course, reach into a conclusion on it. Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. I love the fact that you're looking at sort of making sure there's this, parity across the board for all the stakeholders. Yeah. Which brings me to you, Clara. Clara, I'd like to hear from you, the bright spots that you're seeing, especially dealing with teachers, dealing with schools around the utilization county.
Thank you, Moses. A reference to research projects that we've done in the last 1 to 2 years. One was focused on parents, actually, focusing on how do you empower parents from low-income areas to support learning while at home. And what we target parents from low-income areas in different technology, using different technology as opposed to what you would, like a general population. And in Nairobi, we used SMS, storytelling using SMS for parents in low-income areas, and would give them tips how to engage with your child while at home. And in Keep Kenya Learning, we saw a lot of reception from parents saying, because of the tips I got, I'm able to involve my child more in the activities at home. Apart from them playing, I know that there's other ways we can learn together. They can help me prepare meals, and that way they are, learning. And it's, we use the SMS because we had, after, the majority of the residents in that area have the feature phones. So the other, targeting teachers, I think in Nairobi, differentiating, that has been interesting because one of the studies we've done shows that teachers who have done an extra course in digital training are more likely to use digital devices and more likely to even teach coding, which is a topic in grade 4 and 5. And in Nairobi, you find there's more opportunity for teachers, there's more colleges and more, if there's a course being done in one of the universities or technical institutes like KEMI, or they are more likely to attend. And that almost cuts across, that allows for teachers from even low-income areas to go and take these courses, and we've seen even in low-income, in schools where there's a majority, there's a lot of learners, where normally you would find that teachers are struggling to implement digital technology. Teachers are more open, like one of my colleagues was saying here. Teachers are, they are owning it, and they're being taught how to fish. They're not going to do exactly what they were taught. They now understand, they have enough digital skills to go and own it and implement it based on their situation. So regardless of whether they have 90 learners, they're able to probably connect to a projector or do research which supports then how they teach in their classrooms. So I think the advantage of Nairobi being the capital city and the opportunities that there are, you find teachers taking advantage of that and being able to own the space when they go to the classroom in terms of digital skills. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think another factor must also be the infrastructure.
Yeah,
we have fantastic digital infrastructure that makes that possible within the county of Nairobi. And actually that brings me back to you, Isaac. You're working in the EdTech space. I'm just wondering, in the work that you do, have you seen any innovative, interesting EdTech related solutions and how they're working within the county? Any stories you might be able to share with us on that front?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I have, I think, 2 examples that come top of mind. So Clara mentioned something about text messages. Eneza is based out of Nairobi. There was also, Eneza is based out of Nairobi, and the whole concept was everybody in Nairobi County has access to a feature phone, and you can do a lot of learning and engagement within that format. So whether it is, I want an answer to this question, or I want to access this library, but also extending it to giving access to a bank of teachers that they had. And I've also been fascinated by work that Edu is doing. We talked about the limited access to high-end tech. So let's say in a classroom setting, if it's a high-end class, you'll be able to have perhaps every student in that class will be able to access a mobile device at home. But the model that IDO is working on is you have a shared mobile device and you just use it like in a timeshare model where you can move it from one person to the next person. Because if you have very specific skills that you're trying to teach, train on, the student doesn't need to use the whole device for the whole day. But that said, I think we also have to mention the government DLP, the Digital Literacy Program that was implemented by the Ministry of Education. In spite of the weaknesses in usage, whether it's from a content perspective or the support ecosystem for that, it did a lot to the ecosystem because we now have proof that it's possible to provide the adequate infrastructure within a school setting, talk about electricity, talk about internet connectivity, talk about devices. I think one of the biggest skepticism that people had when the program was launching is the computers or the laptops will be stolen. We haven't really had much of that. In fact, I've not visited a lot of the schools, but from those who work with primary school, they say 8 years later, you walk to a school and some of the devices are still very new. Okay, I mean, on the education side, that's not a good thing because you want them to have been worn out based on usage, but at the very least, it's proven that it's possible to get the appropriate infrastructure to the school, get devices to the school, and have them last for a long time. And hopefully when the government is thinking about like an iteration 2, is building on that strong foundation. So we can say we as EdTech entrepreneurs have benefited a lot from that, and these become lessons that the next generation of EdTech or policy or government is able to build on.
Fantastic. You know, one of the things I think I've also heard a lot as we've been doing EdTech Mondays Kenya is that when children get a chance to use a technology-based learning experience, you know, whether it's a projector, the laptop, the tablet, they're much more engaged, and actually the learning outcomes improve significantly. So it's good to see that, you know, this sort of approach where you're using, you know, the lowest common denominator to achieve an outcome, but at the same time you find that the learner and even the teacher is more engaged by the fact they're using technology.
Absolutely. One thing I want to point out, sometimes it seems like progress is slow, but progress sometimes is slow because you're trying to solve a very difficult problem. We are in the space of administrative tools and content. We have no knowledge on devices. But if you talk to someone who is an expert in devices, they have no knowledge in content. So in this particular case, government provides devices, but someone else needed to provide like a large library of content. Someone else needed to provide connectivity. And building such ecosystem that is redundant, that is robust, takes time, and building that complexity and being comfortable with all the pieces working together takes a lot of time. So sometimes when you think about at the very surface level, how much tech is utilized in classrooms in Nairobi, it masks the fact that the school is already connected to the electricity grid, or the fact that there was an internet connection to the school. It may not be working right now, but we've already proven that it's something that can work, which means the next generation of innovation has a very strong foundation to be built upon.
Thank you. Ahmed, I'd like to come back to you again for the county perspective. Are there any unique initiatives? You've already talked about the feeding program and so forth, but are there any other unique initiatives that you're putting into place to make EdTech more pervasive within all the schools within the county?
Come again?
Are you doing anything else in the county to make sure that EdTech solutions are more inclusive and more distributed, but also at the same time looking specifically at the CBC?
Yeah, currently we really need to appreciate that technology is embraced from the early level of education. Now in our education system, we have have lessons that even taught in ECDs are integrated and of course taught through digital literacy. What we also need to know that is all our children from the pre-primary education are actually introduced into digital literacy at that level. So that we already have an existing ICT labs in all our schools.
Okay.
Yes, in all our schools. And that, you know, they actually introduce you to the digital literacy. And then, although it's not that, it's not really taking it up very fast, but what I can actually say today is that most of our schools have ICT labs, and that digital literacy is introduced at the lowest level in the ECDs.
Fantastic. Thank you. Clara, again, I'd like to hear more about your perspective working with teachers. What have you seen on the ground in terms of empowering them to bring EdTech into their work as teachers? How they're able to incorporate it and make it more impactful in the learning outcomes that they have with their learners?
Thank you. First of all, the teachers in urban areas like Nairobi are more likely to use tech devices, 20% more likely than in rural areas, because of all the reasons, you know, the DLP project being every school in Nairobi that could get the devices has the devices that they need, and the devices are being used. We found that 44% versus 26% in urban versus rural areas. So the openness from teachers, like we've mentioned before here, and then the next stage that we are now thinking through is how teachers can be better supported and coached by the system leaders. So one of the things that teachers have requested is more training. So during when digital literacy program was being implemented, training was done once or a few times by different government agencies, and there's not been, you know, continuous training for them. And if you're trained on a tech device for all of us once and you never get a chance to use it, you know, again you will, you know, like forget. So teachers have requested for more training, more frequent training, and support from school leaders and curriculum support officers, who are some of the people who work with them closely on the day-to-day to coach them, and if they see the importance of this is digital skills or digital literacy and devices are important, then they will continue supporting them well. All the, you know, private organizations leave them, because that's their role. So that's the trend that is currently going on, teacher learning, supporting teacher learning and digital skills, and supporting their coaches to also appreciate and have sufficient knowledge to support them sufficiently.
So ultimately what that means is the more digitally competent they are, the more likely they are to actually use it and, you know, sort of fully utilize it and achieve the potential, so to speak, yes?
Yeah, that's true. I think the more a teacher feels comfortable with the technology, the more likely they are to go in the classroom and use it effectively. I think there's also a balance. You hear teachers talking about the learners know more than me, and, you know, I think the attitude of the learners will be able to engage the devices more than I am able to. If we can prepare them better for that, so that even as they go on and the learners know more than them, they have enough for them to set up by themselves, not only the ICT champion who is in the school. So we have more teachers who are able to set up the devices, more teachers who are comfortable with the learners knowing more than them, and demystifying that fear, and helping them demystify also the almost like a complexity for the learner knows more. Yeah.
But you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, what I wanted to say, I probably forgot when I was talking about the issue of the digital literacy, that Nairobi City County has set aside 50 million annually for digital literacy. In our current CIDP, we captured that we really said we don't have fully, absorbed in terms of digital literacy. And we also had, through partners, engaged, trained teachers in digital literacy, and we already have 60 teachers who are TOTs, teachers who actually have training of trainers, 60 of them who are able to train others in terms of digital
And they're going all through the counties,
Yes.
all the parts to the schools,
Yes.
and training the teachers there.
We did this through Save the Children. Yes.
Fantastic. Isaac, did you have a remark also on this?
Oh, yeah, there's something I want to add. When we think about introducing tech within the school ecosystem, we top of mind digital learning and maybe to some extent administrative tools. But I think like EdTech has a much broader context within the school. I would even say it includes technology within the education ecosystem. So top of mind, I'm thinking of, let's say, the Dishina County, which is the county government, the national government is partnering with Food for Education. They have some of the best tech when it comes to, is it identification, where they
Tap to feed.
tap to feed.
Tap to feed is.
Really fantastic technology. But, and then when that is introduced within the school ecosystem, you're just increasing the digital literacy within that tech ecosystem. It's more like saying when you've already used a projector within the office, and then you now need to move to the HDMI, it's a much, it's not a big jump as being introduced to, I don't know, Bluetooth enabled, yeah, something like that. So I think there's increasingly more ways in which tech is getting into the school ecosystem, and that's also contributing towards making the whole school ecosystem more receptive to additional tech, and not just at the high end. I mean, additional county is mainly for low-income schools. The private schools, they also, I mean, if you think about managing school buses or paying for school fee, those are areas that have already been digitalized to a very big extent. So all those contribute to the overall tech readiness for the school. And I would say like in future iterations, when schools are already that receptive to tech, digital learning will become even more pervasive, or other administrative tools within the school ecosystem.
Thank you. So now I'd like to open it out to the audience. If any of you have any questions you'd like to field to the panelists, now would be the time. So if you just put up your hand, I think a microphone will be provided to you, and you can ask a question to any of the panelists. If you don't put your hand up, I'm going to pick you out. Maybe ask a question.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
I said maybe it's off.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Alex. I'm founder at EDI. Is one of the edtechs. So my question directed was how, especially in the initial stages, for you to navigate the range, getting your
based on the curriculum? Is it based on a lot of content that is not localized in that sense? The story, I suppose that even as we minimize the time, the little time that they spend on the devices would be utilized in content that is localized and customized for the learners, both cultural and content. So I know a lot of learners, and now content being a bit more diverse to target teachers as well. So I think that expands the focus not only to learners only using the devices, but also to teachers. And the hope is that this measuring how much time is spent can then be taken even to schools, so that even as we encourage the use there, it's a meaningful use of the devices and meaningful use of engagement with the content in that sense, yeah.
Okay. I think we move to you, Isaac.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, what you're describing is actually a market opportunity. So I was looking for the name of the company, but it skips my mind. I think their hypothesis when they were founded, maybe in 2014 or something like that, was that in the US there was about, I don't know, hundreds of apps that students need to log into or schools need to log into. Who remembers that many passwords? So it was just like single sign-on for schools. And everybody loved it. And soon enough, it became the default authentication layer for everybody else. But then in the next iteration, it meant that if you want to launch a solution within a school or a school district, it's so much easier for you to launch that within their marketplace rather than walking to each of the various school districts. So I think what you're describing is something that can be easily solved. What you're potentially saying is maybe there's someone who needs to come up with an API where you just plug in. You don't need to walk to each of the schools in Kenya. You just plug into this API interface, and yeah. I don't want the government to take it because the government is good at scaling, but the government is not nimble enough to innovate quickly enough. So that's the perfect solution that an entrepreneur, I won't confirm or deny that we are thinking about it, but I think it's something that's really great for an entrepreneur to take up.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much. NCCG is flexible in terms of partnering for the support of Nairobi children. We are already partnering with so many partners on digital literacy. So we're always welcome for such discussions into our offices. We will have an MOU or something. If we agree on the terms, then we are ready to partner. Yes.
Great. I think the questions are answered. Yeah? So I think we're coming to the end of our session, and I think I'd like to take it back to the panelists. Based on the conversation we've had, I think in a minute or less, if you can respectively share your thoughts, maybe your parting shot on our conversation today, and then we'll bring it to a close. So we'll start off with you, Clara. Is there anything that comes to mind? Any thoughts as we bring our session to a close?
I can reiterate what I've said regarding evidence and the government and private organizations rallying more to do what has been proven to work. We don't always need to learn from our mistakes here. So, for example, in supporting teachers to embrace technology, supporting digital literacy, like Joanne was saying, with parents, so that schools see the importance of that, and parents are able to chip in and say, we'll pay for internet, or or someone else will pay for the internet, and we all see that this culminates to better outcomes. There's a lot of research, and a report by UNESCO a few weeks ago indicated that technology should only be used when it's beneficial to the learners and when it's going to increase the learning outcomes. So I think we are at a place where we've been in education technology or talking about it for long enough to say Nairobi County is advantaged enough to now move to the next stage where it's only going to be used if it's beneficial to the learners, and starting with the teachers and other stakeholders who support that in the classroom.
So ultimately, everyone has
Yeah.
to be a part of it, otherwise it doesn't work.
Exactly, yeah, parents, school leaders, the system leaders and teachers, yeah.
Fantastic. Ahmed, let's hear yours.
Thank you very much. Technology is changing our way of life, and of course, education is also part of it. And I'm here to say that any partner that is willing to support the Nairobi children is much welcome, so that at least we can partner and, of course, see how we can help our children in terms of digital literacy. Thank you very much.
Mine is just a huge thank you to Ahmed and the Nairobi County. We always have these conversations within the EdTech community, and one of the things every one of us always says is, where is government, or how do we learn to speak with government? And can government convene these spaces? So for us to be sitting here, because Nairobi County invited us, is something that's really powerful. When we have multiple iterations of these conversations, we will be able to design for the specific needs and in ways that helps government fulfill its mandate. So it's huge gratitude from me. I think I'm speaking for a lot of EdTech entrepreneurs.
Well, thank you so much to our panelists. We're delighted at all the insights you've shared and the perspectives that you've been able to pass to us. I also want to thank the Nairobi County for giving us this opportunity at Innovate Nairobi to be part of this conversation. And to you, the audience who have participated with us here today, thank you so much for joining us. I'd also like to say that I think the EdTech entrepreneurs, people like yourself, providing the platforms that are sort of innovating and changing the way education is delivered in the county and across the country, I think we must give you our gratitude for the work you've done. I think also at the end of this conversation, what we're hearing is that this is a collective effort. It's an ecosystem. You know, government must play its role. The EdTech solution providers must play their role. The educators are also part of that. And also the other stakeholders like the parents, the caregivers, the schools, all these actors need to work together to make this a great possibility for Nairobi County. I think we've heard about the challenges, we've heard about the opportunities. We've also seen the potential to go forward and do innovative things, such as building a marketplace and also building opportunities for learning for the foundational level of learners. And I think ultimately I'd just like to say that this conversation does not end here. EdTech Mondays is happening every month. In a couple of weeks, this will be aired on NTV as well as a recording. And I'd just like to encourage you to also visit our YouTube channel, the MasterCard Foundation, and also the Young Africa Works Facebook page if you'd like to see other conversations happening online. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists for being part of this conversation. And definitely we're looking forward to catching you in the next EdTech Mondays Kenya. Asanteni sana.
So thank you very much. I think we are done with the recording. I'll just let you know what we'll be doing next. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Clara. Thank you, Moses. Thank you to the team that has been sitting here, the audience. We'd like to take one photo with the panelists in that corner. So we will move there once I finish with the announcement. When we are done, I would like to request our panelists to just hang out for maybe 10 minutes so that if there is an additional question that somebody didn't get to ask, they can do that now. Technically, we are supposed to have a longer conversation, breakout and all of that, but we recognize that it's the end of the day and that may not be possible. Many of you may want to leave because you've been here for several hours. But let's just take 10 minutes. If you have a question to ask them, they are here, they can respond. We also have another track taking place, a talent track, just in case you want to go find out what they're talking about. You are free to leave once we have taken the photo and engaged with them, and you can learn a little bit more about what's happening in the next room at Innovate Nairobi. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. But we are not yet closed, eh? Let's do the photo, and then we can take a few minutes just to take one or two questions.
Okay, we'll just have the panelists please join me at the end here.
Properly, for the job market, whether that's cyber security. We recently launched AI-based courses, artificial intelligence, both from beginner level to decision-making decision-making level. If you want to do software engineering, I guess Moringa School, is the place to be. In terms of collaboration between industry and academia in addressing cyber security challenges, I think one of the most critical things to factor in is continuous professional development. And I'm very happy on upskilling. Naisenya, I don't know whether I should say this, but Naisenya is a product of Moringa School through the Safaricom Digital Academy program. And the most important thing, to remember, when it comes to digital academy is that the curriculum is relevant, it's practical, so that when you're in tech, you actually have to build things. You have to solve problems. So if it is cybersecurity, for instance, are you actually, exploiting, vulnerability? And of course, when it comes to hacking, there is ethical hacking, right, which has positive intentions. So I guess for young people who are getting into, spaces like cybersec, the potential when it comes to tech, is limitless.